Thank you for stopping by to check out this episode of Vintage Audio Review. In this episode, I'm going to talk about this Nakamichi SR2A Stereo Receiver. About a week ago, a friend of mine, we'll just call him Jared, who has great taste in IPAs and sours, was over and asked if I would be interested in testing his Nakamichi amplifier. I said sure. Well, it turns out it's a stereo receiver, which is just fine. And in the little bit of research I did on it, I discovered it was made around 1988 and sold for about $450. Also, it has the stasis designation, which apparently was technology that Nakamichi licensed from Threshold, a prominent amplifier company. I believe they're attributing the stasis design to the circuit whiz Nelson Pass, who is the equivalent of Carroll Shelby to audio people. One of the things I was reading was that this was a Class A amplifier design, and I really don't think so. It uses a complementary output stage, which means it has NPN and PNP transistors, and also it does not get hot just staying there without any signal being run through it, which your Class A amplifiers would have. So I hope that I'm not breaking anybody's heart by telling them that this is not a Class A. It was rated at 30 watts a channel, which sounds like a Class A amplifier, but I am pretty certain that it is not. I will give a quick tour of the front and back of the unit, and then I will show the measurements I made to see how well this amplifier performed after 35 years or so. So starting on the left side, you have your volume and balance knob. We have a loudness control there. You have your tuner controls over here. Very basic. If you come over here, you can see your stasis designation. Over here, we do have a tone bypass control, so it will bypass your bass and treble controls totally. It does control 2 sets of speakers, and you have your tape monitor switch as well as 4 inputs and a headphone jack. Also, it does have the very attractive gold on black Nakamichi coloring scheme. Coming around to the back, you have your FM antenna hookup, your AM antenna hookup, as well as a ground for the phono. Here are your inputs for the phono, tape monitor. And coming over to this side, we have outlets. They're both switched. And we have what appear to be 5-way binding posts. Fooled ya, they're really not. They just unscrew so you can put your wire down here. They are not banana friendly. You can't really fit anything in there. I was really disappointed when I discovered that. And here we have a couple views of the inside of the SR2A with the cover removed. And on this one you can see the output transistors, both channels, against the heatsink. Here we have the THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz for the CD input, and it's with the gain adjusted for 29 dB of gain and the input adjusted so that we have about 5 watts into 8 ohms. And it looks really pretty good. Real low THD, and the SNR is pretty good, and the THD plus noise is not that bad. So we're off to a good start. Here we have the frequency response of the CD input with the gain set for 29 dB at a power level of 5 watts into 8 ohms. And it looks pretty darn flat. I would give it a flatness of about 0.6 of a dB, which is pretty good. Here we have the THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz for an output power of approximately 39 watts into 8 ohms, which was about the most I could get out of the unit before distortion got really bad. The spec for the unit was 30 watts into 8 ohms at 0.1% THD with an SNR of better than 85 dB. We're about there on the SNR, and we're definitely there on the THD, so it is meeting its spec requirement. And here we have the frequency response at 39 watts into 8 ohms, and the spec is minus 0.5 dB, and we're at about a flatness of 0.6 of a dB, so we're not that far away. Here we have the THD SNR plot for the moving magnet phono input with 5 millivolts applied. The specification is less than 0.002% at 1 kilohertz, and the SNR is greater than 80 dB. Now, that is for a 1 volt output signal at the tape monitor record output, which is where I'm measuring this. However, we only have about 400 millivolts because I didn't notice that the spec was to have a 1 volt output, which would have meant applying more than 5 millivolts in. So we have decent looking performance, in my opinion, of the phono stage of this Nakamichi. One thing that is a little bit different is that the harmonics are on the lower side of the 1 kilohertz frequency rather than on the upper side like what we usually see. And here we have the frequency response of the phono input measured at the tape monitor record output, and the specification is plus or minus half a dB, and we're looking at about 0.6 of a dB overall flatness. So I would say that we've met that specification, and the channels look to be fairly well balanced. And lastly, I'm going to include the multi-tone test results on the SR2A stereo receiver. They didn't have any specification on this test. It may not have even been around back then, but I thought I would include it, and it shows the amount of intermodulation distortion products that the unit has. After I had finished my measurements, I hooked the SR2A up to my KEF 107 speakers. Once again, the KEFs are 4-ohm speakers. I was very pleased with the sound that I heard. I hit 85 dB SPLs. I probably could have gone a little bit higher, but I decided that was a comfortable enough listening level, and it sounded really nice. I liked the tight bass with the loudness control on, and the highs were okay. It sounded very nice, and I have no complaints at all about this amplifier. I think it would be a good buy for the right person if you like a vintage piece of equipment and you can pick this up at a reasonable price. I would definitely go for it. Once again, I thank you for stopping by and visiting, and hope you will leave a comment, and please subscribe if you have not. And once again, have a great day or night.